Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering. That's probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I'm Leslie.
And I'm Shauna.
Today we are going to bring you another precon deep dive. We're going to break down all the cards in this deck. And then we're going to tell you what this deck is meant to do. And we are also going to, if you get to the end, offer some tweaks and suggestions on how we think we can make this deck a little bit better than just the precon.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today. Without further ado, Shauna, what deck are we talking about and what does it do?
We are talking about the new Commander Legends Reap the Tides deck, which is kind of crazy fun. This one is all about making some really big boys that are gonna just basically kill people because they're so big. It's a little bit of ocean theme, some Leviathan, some Kraken, some big blue, blue and green.
It's crazy.
Want me to talk about the commander?
Yeah, please do.
The commander is AC, Tyrant of Gyre Straits, or Gyre Straits, Dire Straits. Aha, get it. Anyway, I just noticed that. Dire Straits. Is that a Canadian band? Yeah, Canadian band,
so.
yeah. Anyway, for 4 and a green and a blue, this is a 5/5 legendary serpent, and you may play an additional land on each of your turn, which you're going to need. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card, and you're going to need that too. It's going to be a while before you can get this guy out there, so we got to stay alive. We'll get into that.
Stay alive. So breaking down this deck a little bit for you, mana curve and types and colors. So when we look at our mana curve on this deck, we actually see a very odd mana curve. This is not your typical mana curve.
No.
There's 1 at 1 mana cost. There are 13 at 2 mana cost, which is decent. 10 at 3 mana cost, and then we get other things that are big and beefy. So 7 at 4 mana cost, 6 at 5 mana cost, and 19 cards in this deck that are 6 mana cost plus. So 6, 7, or 8 is basically what you're looking at. That is a crazy number of cards at a really high mana cost. How is this going to be possible? We shall see. As far as card types goes, there are 31 creature cards, there are 18 instants and sorceries, 3 enchantments, 4 artifacts, and 44 land. So that's going to help with your big beefy things. And of course there's landfall that matters, so you want to have some lands, so when you play lands and play additional lands per turn, of course your commander allows you to do that, then you can get things out really fast. As far as the color breakdown goes, this is mostly green, this deck. It's very close green and blue, but 39% green, 32% blue. Colorless, we have about 10%, and then your multicolor are 17%. So it's fairly even across the board for blue and green in this deck. And yeah, so that's your breakdown.
And the way we're going to go through the video is we always have a commander formula that we use. If you have never seen Leslie's video that she made about this formula back in the day, go back and check out that video. She goes through that whole formula. But so usually we have 15 ramp cards, 15 removal cards, 13 card draw, and 12 high impact, really amazing game-winning cards. And then we have other on theme or other win condition type cards. There are about 10 of those, and then about 34 in the land. So again, some flexibility with that, but that's generally how we build decks and how we evaluate them is based on those numbers.
Yeah. So diving right into the cards in this, we'll talk about the first section as mana ramp and mana generators. So as we just talked about, the formula that we use says that we should have about 15 cards in our deck that have mana ramp. This card has 11, so it's decent. It's right close to there. The first one is Yavimaya Elder for 1 and 2 green. It's a 2/1, and when it dies, you may search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle your library. So you're okay with this guy dying. You can pay 2 to sacrifice him and draw a card, which means he's going to die. So if nobody will kill him for you, or you can't block with him, then you can just sacrifice him yourself when you need to get your 2 lands and draw a card. So nice little card there. I like that one.
Coiling Oracle for a green and a blue. It's a little 1/1, and when it enters the battlefield, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. So it's a little bit of card draw and land, possibly at the same time.
So Cultivate is a fairly big Commander staple, but for those of you that are new to Commander or new to this type of format, Cultivate, basically you pay 2 and 1 green. You can go search your library for 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards. You get to put 1 on the battlefield tapped and 1 into your hand. So nothing wrong with getting 2 cards right off the bat.
You need it. Explore is for 1 and a green, and you may play an additional land this turn, and you get to draw a card. So that, again, helps you get going.
And hopefully you will have land in your hand to play that additional land, but you don't have to. If you just need it for a draw card, that's why it says may. So anytime you see something that it says you have to do this and you have to do that, if it says may, that means it's optional. If it does not say may, it means you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to target that thing or whatever. So that's an aside, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Kadama's Reach for 2 and a green. It basically does the same thing as Cultivate. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, and then shuffle your library.
Rampant Growth for 1 and a green. It's a search your library for basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. You
only
need
one
these
for
guys. This is what a lot of the green cards are.
Yeah. Search for tomorrow. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. So you're only going to do 1. The other thing that this card has, though, is called Suspend. So Suspend 2. So rather than paying the 3, you can pay 1 and put it out on the battlefield with a counter on it. And then each time you have an upkeep, you're going to remove 1 counter, and then you're going to be able to, when you take all the counters off, that's when that spell gets cast, so on your upkeep. So the nice thing is you can use your mana that turn, get it out there, get it kind of going and doing its thing, and then you can use your mana for other ramp spells or something like that that turn. So use it wisely.
Yes. And Growth Spiral for green and a blue. This is, I love this artwork on this card. You draw a card, and you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. This is, you always want to do this on your opponent's turn and just get your engine going.
Simic Signet. This is a great little card. It is basically 2 mana. You can pay 1 and tap it to tap for a green and a blue. So it's very specific of what it taps for, and it does cost you 1. But basically, you're going to tap 1 forest, and it gets you a green and a blue instead of just the 1 thing. So it basically turns 1 of your land into a multi-land.
And then Soul Ring, of course, for 1, it's the 2 colorless mana that you need. Every commander deck needs a soul.
Yeah. Everyone needs a soul ring. Calney's Heart Expedition is for 2 mana cost. It's an enchantment. And this has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a quest counter on this little enchantment dude. And then you can remove 3 quest counters and sacrifice it to search your library for 2 basic land cards. Put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. So in this case, you're not putting 1 in your hand and 1 on the battlefield. You're going to put them both out on the battlefield after you it has 3 quest counters. So it's kind of one of those things that as you're playing land, which you could play 3 land in 1 turn, if you're doing things wisely, then so then the next time you get 1. So there is definitely a lot of really good ramp if you get all these cards in your opening hand, then you're golden. Hopefully they're not kind of all at the bottom, which is always the risk. So
if you don't have any mana ramp in your opening hand, you probably should mulligan. Just saying with this deck.
Even if you had like 5 land in your opening hand or 4 land in your opening hand, but you didn't have any mana ramp, I would say mulligan.
Yeah.
Just because you need it
in this deck.
Anyway, what's our next section?
Okay, so then we're into the removal because you need to stay alive while you're getting set up for your stuff here. So this deck, the formula is 15, and this deck has 16. So yeah, you need to be getting rid of their stuff and trying to stay on the board while you are able to build up to play your big boys.
Yeah. Except for that, a lot of these removal are big boys.
That's true. Like the first one, the Elder Deep Fiend for 8. It's a 5/6 Eldrazi Octopus. It has flash though, and you can pay its emerge cost, which is 5 and 2 blue, which means you may cast this spell by sacrificing a creature you control, and reducing the cost by that creature's converted mana cost. And when you cast Elder Deep Fiend, you get to tap up to 4 target permanents. So you really mess with their board when this guy comes out, is basically what he does.
Mm-hmm.
So that's removal in blue.
Yeah, well, and it's nice that that emerge cost is going to be big, because ultimately,
Yeah.
if you have like one of your Yavimaya Elder or something like that, it's 3.
Yeah.
So it's going to reduce it by 3. So does that mean that it's now 2 and 2? So it only costs 4 to get it out?
Yeah, exactly.
So Terrasadon is 6 and 2 green, so 8 mana cost for this lovely little 9/9 elephant. When it enters the battlefield, you get to destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents. So it doesn't have to be, or it's not a creature, it is a non-creature permanent.
Right.
For each permanent put into a graveyard, this way its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. So non-creature permanent can be an enchantment, it can be an artifact, it can be
Planeswalker.
land, but that would be me.
Yes. It could be a land, I never thought of that. Oh my.
So it just depends on how much you want people to hate you. No one likes a land destruction deck.
No. You know who you are. Slinvoda, the Rising Deep, for 6 and 2 blue. I love this big boy. He is a Leviathan, an 8/8. But he has a kicker cost of 1 and a blue, so you can add that to the... If you add that to the cost of the 8 when you're playing it, you get some extra bonuses here. So when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return all creatures to their owner's hands, except for merfolk, krakens, leviathans, octopuses, and serpents, which is what you have.
Yeah.
So you're going to, mess with their stuff.
Yeah, that's our first Leviathan.
And then have all your big boys out there.
But
It's the
just
plan.
think about those Krakens, Leviathan, and octopuses for the rest of the game. So, Acidic Slime is a great card. I love this card. It is a 5 mana cost 2/2, and you're like, what? Why would you play 5 for a 2/2? Well, let me tell you, it has Death Touch. So first of all, people aren't going to want to swing in. You have a Death Touch creature. Second of all, it has the additional ability that when it enters the battlefield, you get to destroy a target artifact, enchantment, or land. Which might be a valid strategy, because if you're going to have to take a long time to set up, you want them to take a long time to set up too. So we joke, we are a little serious,
that's kind of what you need to do.
but you might want to destroy their land,
Especially if it's a rogue passage.
Yeah.
Looks like. Reclamation Sage. I love this newer art on this one. It's for 2 and a green, and it is a 2/1 Elf Shaman, and when it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. You're going to bounce that with your Slinvoda as well, which is kind of nice, and then you get to do it again.
Yeah, it's great. And ultimately, that's one of your kind of lower mana cost things. So hopefully you have this out early.
Yeah.
Wickerbout Elder, when it enters the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. It is a 4 mana cost 4/4. And then you can pay 1 and remove a -1/-1 counter to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Ultimately, this guy comes in as a 3/3. You can remove the counter, make him a 4/4, and destroy an artifact or enchantment. So that's what he's for. He's to remove something, and he gets bigger.
Yeah. One of my favorite cards from Ravnica and Guild of Ravnica is Shark to Crab for 2 and a green and a blue. It's a 4/4 that you can pay that 2 and a green and a blue and adapt it and put a 1/1 counter on them. And whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put onto the Shark to Crab, tap target creature an opponent controls, and that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step.
Mm-hmm.
Such a fun card. You can put other 1/1 counters on later on. Do it again. It's fun.
Yeah. It's great. So Meteor Golem is, again, in a lot of commander decks that are out there. It's a nice little card. When it enters the battlefield, you get to destroy a target non-land permanent that an opponent controls. Could be a creature, enchantment, artifact, whatever. Don't let its commonness, I mean it's uncommon, but don't let its commonness deter you from this. This is a great card, and I think a lot of people kind of go, oh yeah, whatever, it's just a Meteor Golem.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's nothing like a Meteor Golem at the right moment.
Exactly. Helps many, many times. We've got Whelming Wave for 2 and a 2 blue. It's a sorcery, and return all creatures to their owner's hands, except for krakens, leviathans, octopuses, and serpents. Get your meteor golem out again, get your reclamation sage out again, get all this stuff out again. It's going to help you. Plus, you're getting rid of all their stuff.
Yeah. Arcane Denial, because blue players can't have a blue deck without a counter spell in it. So 1 and a blue for counter target spell. Its controller may draw up to 2 cards at the beginning of their next upkeep. So you are saying, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm going to let you draw some cards because I'm countering your spell. But you also get to draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So you get an additional card yourself as well. So it's kind of a fun little counter spell.
Yeah. Speaking of counterspell, it's counterspell.
Da, 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 da.
For two blue, it's counter target spell. It's just the
Simple.
been around for a while.
Yeah, been around for a while, but oddly a very expensive card and hard to find.
It does, yeah.
Into the Royal for 1 and a blue. It has a kicker cost of 2 as well. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If this spell was kicked, you get to draw a card. So this is a great way to protect your own creatures if you need to return them to your hand, your commander, for example.
Yeah.
You get to draw a card off of it, or if they have something that is just being ridiculous and you want to slow it down, make them cast it again, and then you can return one of their cards to your hand. Maybe they've enchanted one of your creatures or put a bunch of negative counters on it, return it to your hand, and get rid of those things.
It's just a flexible card. Peel from Reality for 1 and a blue. It is an instant. Return target creature you control and target creature you don't control to their owner's hands. Just same idea. Just messing with the board, getting rid of stuff.
That's blue removal, returning things to their hand or tapping things. Some green removal, however. Beast Within. For 2 and a green, destroy target permanent. Its controller gets a 3/3 green beast creature token. So you're giving them a gift. The gift of destroying their creature.
Is it permanent or creature?
It's permanent.
It's a permanent. Okay,
yeah,
right.
So it can be.
Forgot about that. I always forget about when it says permanent. That's so helpful.
Yeah. And it doesn't say non-land permanent.
It doesn't. Oh dear. Leslie. Cimic Charm for a green and a blue. Choose 1. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn, or permanent you control gain hexproof until end of turn, or return target creature to its owner's hand. It's just one of those really, really handy instances that you need at that moment. It's a charm.
Yeah. So here's another big beefy guy. He costs 5 and 2 blue, so 7 mana cost 7/7, which is on par for how much you should pay.
A new card, I think, isn't it?
This is a new card, yeah.
Cool.
And return a land you control to its owner's hand, so you can play a land again. Untap Trenched Behemoth, it gains hexproof until the end of turn. So that's an ability that it has, basically. You return a land to your hand, and this gains hexproof. Right?
Wow, whatever you want.
Whenever you want. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, target creature and opponent control attacks during its controller's next combat phase if able. So basically it has like a nice little goad feature whenever you play a land, and you can return a land to your hand so you can take advantage of that landfall. Really, really good little Kraken card there. I like that. It should cost 7.
It's a politics kind of card for sure.
Yeah.
Then we're into the card draw and tutors part of our review here, and the formula says 13 and the deck has a 9, so not bad. I'd like to see a little bit more in there, but your commander does that too, so we'll see how that goes. Sphinx of Usoon for 5 and 2 blue. It's a 5/6 flying Sphinx. Sphinx are always so awesome.
She accentuates flying because she hates it.
It always gets me. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 5 cards of your library, and opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So that's the politics right there.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly.
It's one to take.
Fathom Mage for 2 and a green and a blue is a little 1/1. I wonder why. It must be good for whatever other reason. So first of all, it has evolved, which we'll come back to. But whenever a 1/1 counter is put onto Fathom Mage, you get to draw a card. So evolve, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, If that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, you get to put a 1/1 counter on this creature. So it has this nice little ability that gives it 1/1 counters. Almost all of your creatures are like 7/7s and 8/8s and 5/6s. So right off the bat, it's for sure going to be bigger. Once it gets to 7/7, you don't necessarily get it, but by that time you probably won't need to draw that many cards. And you've drawn enough cards anyway. So gets you your card draw early on. It gets beefy. It's a nice little low mana cost card. So yeah, good little card draw.
Mole Drifter for 4 and a blue. It's a 2/2 flying, and when it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. And you can evoke this card, so that means that's for 2 and a blue. So you can pay less, and you may cast the spell for its for its evoke cost. If you do, it's sacrificed when it enters the battlefield. So you get to do that once, but you could be bringing that back from the graveyard, or there's lots of other things that you can be doing. It's just a really, really good flyer. Good hat. Yeah.
Compulsive Research. This is Shauna and I's one of our favorite cards because it has a librarian on it. I'm assuming she's a librarian because she's got a big stack of books. For 2 and a blue, target player draws 3 cards, and then that player discards 2 cards unless he or she discards a land card. So you could use this for yourself, but if you don't need to draw anything, you could also use this for politics and say, you know what, I feel like Shauna needs some help. So Shauna, if you give me immunity for a couple turns, I'll let you draw a couple cards.
You could.
Yeah.
You could do
they
that.
do have to discard a couple cards as well. But they get to draw, so there's nothing wrong with that.
Harmonize. It's a green staple for sure. For 2 and 2 green, it is a sorcery. Draw 3 cards. You need it.
And Urban Evolution is a 5 mana cost sorcery. Draw 3 cards. You may play an additional land this turn. So that's really nice. So what you're noticing theme wise, there's not as many draw cards in this, but the ones
they're awesome.
The ones that you do have draw you 3 or whatever when you need to. So it's not just draw 1 card. So those are great.
Then we have Fact or Fiction for 3 and a blue. It's an instant. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into piles. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into the graveyard. So that's similar to that other one we saw. So Seer's Sundial is a 4 mana cost artifact. It just goes on the battlefield. It has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2, and if you do, you get to draw a card. So there's some versatility there. You don't have to pay the 2. Early game, you might not have the 2 to play or pay, so it's not going to do what you need it to do, but it does give you some versatility later in the game for sure. Is it Jor or
Ior?
Ior, that's an I.
Yeah.
Ruin Expedition for 1 and a blue. It's an enchantment that has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a quest counter on it and remove 3 quest counters from it and sacrifice it. You get to draw 2 cards. So just a little play it later.
Yeah. Now we're into our high impact cards, and the ones that we have are super high impact. The formula says we should have 12. We only have 9 in this deck, but the ones that we have are really good. So Avenger of Zendikar, this is a great card. I love that this is in this deck. It's 5 and 2 green for a 5/5, so it's pretty expensive. However, it enters the battlefield. You get to create some 0/1 green plant creature tokens for each land you control. So all of a sudden, you have at least 7 little blockers because it costs 7.
Yep.
And then it has landfall, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a 1/1 counter on each plant creature that you control. So he is a nice little guy that basically buffs up all of your little blockers and makes them really big. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've won games with that card. Nezahal Primal Tide for 5 and 2 blue, a 7/7. Big elder dinosaur that it can't be countered, so they can't stop you from playing it. You have no maximum hand size, which hopefully you'll need in this deck. And whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, you get to draw a card. So that's going to happen lots in a commander game, I'll tell you that. And you can discard 3 cards and exile it, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So it has a way to save itself, protect itself, so that you can continue on with your big 7/7 beast.
So timing wise though, if you don't have 3 cards in your hand to discard when this is killed, what happens?
You can't do it. It dies.
So
sadly.
be cognizant when you have things that give things indestructible that you have to pay for, or that you have a counter spell in your hand, or in this case you have to discard 3 cards in order to save it. You want to make sure that you have those cards in your hand so that you can actually save it if you need to save it. Scourge of the Fleets for 5 and 2 blue. So again, 7 mana, cost 6/6. But when it enters the battlefield, you get to return each creature your opponents control with a toughness of X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. So you want to have lots of islands on the battlefield for this, so that you basically just return hopefully everything that they control to their owner's hand, but you get to keep yours, which seems to be a theme.
Shipbreaker Kraken for 4 and 2 blue. It's a 6/6 with monstrosity of 4. So you can pay 6 and 2 blue later on and put 4 1/1 counters on it to make it monstrous. When it becomes monstrous, tap up to 4 target creatures. Those creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap steps for as long as you control this huge 10/10 Kraken that you're going to be able to get in and kill them with really quickly.
Hopefully.
10/10 is going to do a lot of damage.
With only 40 life, it's only four turns of that taking that guy. Stormtied Leviathan for 5 and 3 blue. So 8 and 3 of them are actually named as colors for an 8/8. But this guy is a Leviathan, so it's pretty safe with all your like return spells. And it's got Island Walk, which means that creatures, if that person has an island, then you can attack them and they can't block that creature. All lands are islands in addition to their other types. So now everyone's lands are islands as well as their other types, and creatures without flying or island walk can't attack. So now their stuff can't attack because it either doesn't have flying or island walk, hopefully. They can't block this guy because it's unblockable because they all have islands, and it's an 8/8. Like, why?
Because it wins you the game. Oh dear. Krattus, which is a 5 and 2 blue for an 8/8 Kraken. It has hexproof unless it's attacking or blocking. So it's sitting there ready to go. It can't be blocked unless all creatures the defending player controls blocks it. So they have to make that decision. Are they going to try to kill this thing? They maybe should.
Yeah,
but they might lose everything to do that.
And they might have only 7 power on it. It's like, well, if you're going to block, you got to block with everything, lose everything.
Go big or go home.
Love it, love it.
Them to do something.
Malimo Sorcerer for 4 and 3 green, another hard to cast creature. However, it has trample, and its power and toughness is equal to the number of lands you control. So nice little card, similar to like Multani, if you've seen that before. But yeah, it's however many lands you have, and you have a lot of land in this deck and a lot of ways to get land, and he's just a big beefy guy.
Yeah. Verdant Sun Avatar. This one is going to keep you alive. For 5 and 2 green, it's a 5/5 dinosaur that whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. So this is going to keep you alive. You're almost dead, but your deck's starting to ramp up. This one's going to keep you alive.
Well, and if you think of Malimo, if you have this on the battlefield and then you play Malimo and you have, let's say, 15 land on the battlefield already, you're going to gain 15 life. And then every time you play a creature, it's just like it's a crazy card.
Yeah.
Crazy card. Simic Sky Swallower for 5 and a green and a blue is a 6/6 with flying and trample and shroud. So it can't be the target of spells or abilities, yours or theirs. So that's the difference between hexproof and shroud. Shroud means that nobody can target it, including yourself. And hexproof means only your opponents can't target it. So that's the thing.
Oh dear.
So not as many high impact cards as we normally see, but the ones that are in there are like, what? So
winning.
I mean, they don't want people to hate people playing these decks, I don't think. So I don't know. I played against rogues a lot. Or I've played rogues, so that's a pretty good deck too.
It is. If you haven't got that one, pick it up.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Then we have other cards on theme or specialty cards, just cards that help the whole gist of the deck work. So the formula is 10, and this deck we figure there's about 10 as well. So first one we have here is Maloku, the Clouded Mirror for 4 and a blue. It's a 2/4 with flying, and you can pay 1 and return a land you control to its owner's hand. Put a 1/1 blue illusion creature token onto the battlefield. It's not even tapped, it's just there. So that's kind of nice. Then you can get that whole landfall thing happening with your commander and stuff. There's other things too, right?
So Rampaging Baylos is also another. We weren't sure which one to put this in. We put it in because it's not as good as the other cards that they have in high impact, but it's pretty high impact. But we put it in other. It's a 6/6 for 6. It's got trample, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get to create a 4/4 beast creature token. So it's just gonna keep creating a bunch of things on your board that you can either use as blockers or just be super aggressive with.
And you can get that card out fairly early, it seems.
Yeah.
Like any decks that I've had it in, it gets out pretty quickly. So it's very helpful.
If you have ramp and you're thinking you're playing your cultivates and you have your rocks and all those kind of things, like it's not turn 6 that comes out on. You can probably get it turn 4 or 5. Yeah. So.
Rampaging Excavator. It is a 2 and a green for a 2/3 Naga Cleric. This is a must-have in a landfall deck. You may play land cards from your graveyard. Just gives you so much more landfall for sure.
Yeah, there's lots of cards out there in Commander that make you put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, or if someone is playing the same deck against you, they've destroyed some land. So.
Well, and even with how many cards did we just talk about that the opponent makes you get rid of some of your cards right into your graveyard? So hopefully those are lands.
So Murkfiend Liege for 2 and 3 hybrid mana. It's a 4/4, and other green creatures you control get +1/+1, as well as other blue creatures you control get +1/+1. If it's green and blue, it gets +2/+2. And you get to untap all green and or blue creatures you control during each other player's untap step. So you just get to keep untapping your creatures after you've swung with them, and all your creatures get bigger. And look at her just shake her head like, oh my god.
We've seen this one.
We've seen this one in action. It's
not good.
Ridiculous.
And then we have Eternal Witness, which is going to help with that whole graveyard thing. So 1 and 2 green. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So you had to get rid of a Leviathan. You're going to bring it back. You're going to play it later on in the game.
Spore Mound, little 3/3 for 5. It's landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you're going to get a Sapperling. So nice little blockers that help if they don't have trample.
Spitting Image. That's what could be both.
Could be both.
For 4 and 2 hybrid mana, it's a sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature, and you can retrace it, which means you may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a land in addition to paying its other costs. So yeah, you could do this twice, making copies of your big Leviathans or something crazy.
And it's okay that you discarded a land because you can play them from your graveyard. Swiftfoot Boots. This is in lots of commander decks, so we just put it in kind of like the other cards, but it's nothing to shy away from. It's hexproof and haste, and its quip is only 1, so nothing wrong with that, giving one of your big guys hexproof. So.
Retreat to Kazandu for 2 and a green. It's an enchantment and that has landfall. And whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So you've got some 1/1 counter stuff that you want to have happen. Or you can gain 2 life. Which, again, staying alive so you can get your big boys out.
Versatile. Stump, Squall, Hydra. This is a new one that just came out for X and 3 green. So it's a little hard to cast. It's only 1/1, but when it enters the battlefield, you can distribute X 1/1 counters among it or any number of commanders. So if you have your commander out on the battlefield, you can give it some counters if you want, or you can put them all on this guy and just have like a really big Hydra out on the battlefield. I like that this kind of plays with the whole having commander, and I like that it says any number of commanders because partner is of course a big thing that's coming.
Right. That's right. Wow, and now we're into the lands. So this deck has, the formula is 34, and this deck has 44. That whole landfall thing, that whole big creatures thing. So there might be some changes you can make to this with the much land, but I don't know. You might want to play around with that and see how that goes.
Yeah.
So the first thing we get into is, of course, Command Tower, which is add 1 mana of any color to your commander's color identity, and Blighted Woodland, which is another little adding colorless mana, but you can use it to go and find some other mana that you need. So that's what's nice about that one.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course we have the typical tap, crack, search lands. So Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, they're both ones that you could sacrifice to go and search for the land that you want. So.
And then Coral Atoll and Jungle Basin are the 2 lands that you have to sacrifice unless you return a tapped forest or island to your hand. But it means you get to add, depending on which one, you get to add 2 mana to your mana pool, which is really awesome for them. And Cimic Growth Chamber is the same sort of thing. You have to return a land to your hand, but it's a green and a blue. So you need those extra mana for sure.
Yeah. And then we have the other dual lands that are out there. This deck has a number of them. So Simic Guildgate, Woodland Stream, and Thornwood Falls are all cards that tap for one or the other.
Then we have the Vivid Creek and Vivid Grove lands that come in with charge counters on them, and that lets you add 1 mana of any color if you remove the charge counter, which is kind of nice. Again, if you're in that pinch, you need another green or whatever.
Yeah, nice and versatile there. Memorial to Genius enters the battlefield tapped, and you can sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. So again, if you're looking for card draw, sometimes land allows you to do that with various different things. So that's a great card.
And then we have our awesome Reliquary Tower, which is that land that gives you unlimited hand size. So hopefully you're going to need that in this deck, that you're going to have lots of cards in your hand to ramp up to getting your big boys out.
And then there's 15 forests and 15 islands. Remember we talked about the mana curve or the colors being pretty even as far as red and blue goes. That's why there's an even number of basic lands. If you were going to tweak this, you could play with the lands again, like Shauna was saying. You do need those lands in there, but the basic lands is kind of where I would start. If you are going to tweak. So that brings us to our next section. So if you've gotten this far, you know how to play this deck and how it should work. But if you want some tweaks, please definitely stay. So our tweaks, what were we talking about for tweaks?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we're worried about not getting to our big creatures fast enough, that we need to get them out as fast as we can. So maybe a little bit more mana ramp is something that we talked about for sure. So we have the Simic. We thought, again, if you've watched our previous video, getting the ramp out there that also lets you draw cards is really, really useful. And there are more cards out there that do that, like Simic Locket, for example, is one that can be green or blue mana. And then later on you can pay 4 of any of those combinations and sacrifice it and draw 2 cards. So that's a really great in the late game for sure. Hedron Archive is a similar sort of thing. It comes in and it's 2 colorless mana, so that again helps with your big beasts. And then later on you can sacrifice and draw 2 cards as well. So
yeah, and Commander Sphere does the same thing. Nice thing is that it adds any color in your commander's color identity, but then you can also sacrifice it to draw a card. So there's lots of rocks out there, and I guess what we were thinking is that while the landfall is more important for your land is more important for your landfall, if you can't get your stuff out there that has landfall, then you're going to be kind of in a bind. So adding 2 or 3 rocks in there on top of the one that's in there already might be a good option for this deck. So Garruk's Uprising is another card that we thought might be really good. This deck is made of big beefy creatures. So this is a 2 and 1 green mana cost enchantment, and it enters the battlefield. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you get to draw cards. So that helps with your card draw that we thought you might need. But it also means that creatures you control have trample, which is excellent in this deck, being able to get in no matter what. So they can't just chump block your 8/8 Leviathan.
Exactly.
It's going to get in for some major damage if they don't kill it. And whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you also get to draw a card. So again, later on, you're going to keep playing big creatures. That's a great card for this.
And Colossal Majesty is similar in that at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. So it doesn't have the trample piece, but every time you play, every time you're going to get one of these.
Yeah,
get
exactly.
a draw. So
every upkeep, basically.
Every upkeep,
you don't have to play it. Yeah. So Nadir Kraken was another one we were thinking might take advantage of the fact that your commander basically allows you to draw cards when you play a land. And there's quite a few other cards that allow you to draw because other things happen. Colossal Majesty, we just talked about, if you put that in there. So Nadir Kraken allows you to pay 1. If you do, you put a 1/1 counter on it, and you get to create a little blue tentacle creature token, which will help with your blocking. It's also a Kraken, which is safe for those spells that return all creatures that are not Krakens, Leviathans, and Octopi.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Octopi or octopuses, but I think it's octopuses. But anyway, back to your hand. So
then we have Llanowar Visionary. So this one is a really, really great green card to have in. It's a 2/2 when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and it gets to be a mana dork as well. So we were just thinking, need to get some little stuff out there fast, like the Nadir Kraken and this one.
Yeah, and mana dorks are great. This one, you don't want to put too many mana dorks in, but at the same, this one has the ability to draw a card, which is why we were thinking that one.
Yeah.
Lore Scale Codal is another one of those cards that takes advantage of drawing a card. So it's a 2/2 for 3, and whenever you draw a card, you get to put a 1/1 counter on it. That's drawing for turn as well as those extra draws that you do. So it's going to get big fast. It is not a Leviathan, Kraken, or Snake, so it's not safe. Yeah, right. So it's not safe from like your board wipes that get rid of all of those types of creatures, but it will slow them down a little bit. So this is a nice take advantage of that extra draw.
They need to deal with it. Ominous Seas. So this is for 1 and a blue, an enchantment that Leslie loves to play. Whenever you draw a card, put a foreshadow counter on it. And so that's anytime you're drawing cards, you're putting counters on this thing, and you remove 8 counters, and you make a 8/8 Kraken. So there we go. It's a Kraken. And you can really make this, use it all the time, right? You're going to draw lots of cards and making lots of Krakens.
And you don't have to sacrifice it to create your 8/8.
Exactly.
Kraken. A lot of times the cards will like remove the counters and sacrifice it and get this. This is like, you just keep popping off Krakens.
Making Krakens.
I love this card. It's one of my favorites. Glint for 1 and a blue was another one we thought might be really good. Target creature you control gets +0/+3 and gains hexproof until the end of turn. So what we were thinking is your creatures cost a lot to get out there. And once you've spent that much mana on them, you don't want them to die. You want to be able to use them for more than 1 turn or more than 2 turns. So being able to kind of like instantly give it hexproof is another great way. So we looked for some cards for that. There's lots out there. Glint is one of them.
Dive Down is another one that's really been used a lot. Again, you just pay 1 and you have it gains +0/+3 and gains hexproof too. So you want to protect.
Yeah, it's not as good as Indestructible, which is kind of what a white thing, so that's why we can't put that. But Blossoming Defense is a green one, and that's the same thing. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof until the end of turn. So those are ones that you're going to want to save in your hand if you do decide to put them in this deck and use them for protection. There wasn't a lot of protection in this deck for your stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So the other 2 things that I was thinking that we didn't talk about as we were kind of talking about this, Mending of Dominaria would be really great for this deck because ultimately it's a saga. You're going to put cards into your graveyard and then you get to return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, whether it was put there that turn or not, so it can get your stuff that has died back. It also allows you to, at its 3rd turn, put all the land in your graveyard onto the battlefield, which would trigger landfall if you have landfall stuff onto the battlefield, as really well as, you know, your big thing that's equal to the land and gets all your land out there. So Mending of Dominaria
that should be pretty
definitely should go in this deck, I think, as a must. And the other one that I think must go in this deck is Rogue's Passage.
Right.
Because it's not. And I think...
You're right, it's not.
Again, I think Rogue's Passage should go in any commander deck, but this one, because you have such big things, being able to swing in for that much and unblockable is amazing. So
And another one we didn't put in that we did mention as we were going through was Multani.
Yeah.
If you have that one, that's another good one to put in.
Takes
it's a big
advantage of
green
all the
guy
land-
that
the
does the
land.
land stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can take out some of the kind of like the not high impact creatures and I would put Multani and Mending of Dominaria in there as kind of options.
Yeah,
So
for
again,
sure.
we would definitely recommend that you play these first and see where
Yeah.
you want to tweak them before you just kind of say, well, they said put these in. These are just suggestions
Exactly.
of if you want to do this, then this is what you could do. If you want to do this, this is what you could do. We haven't played with them yet, of course, and we're looking forward to very
Yeah.
much playing with them. So
For
we'll
sure.
see how that
For
goes.
sure.
But that's it for this time. Thank you so much for joining us, watching and listening. You can find us, of course, you found us on YouTube already, but we also have some podcasts out there. You can check those out. Feel free to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we'd love to hear from you and hear what you think. We also have Twitch, and we play Commander as well as do a bunch of other really fun things throughout the week with Magic Arena. So
Yeah.
definitely check us out on Twitch. We just want to connect with you. We want to talk to you. So that's it for this time. And in
Yeah.
the meantime, tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. Bye, guys.
Bye.